in terms of speed and how things play in, but they're actually saying the words in English and mouthing the words in English. It's just crazy. Rocky and Bullwinkle had a lot of those, side stories as well, which I thought was really neat as well. So, Rocky and Bullwinkle has to be up there too. It's one of the classics of all time. All right, I'm going to stop there, get into what I think about it. I think, I'll put it down to a couple and then I'll choose for you guys. So I think it's got to come down to a few. Some of you mentioned South Park. I think South Park has to be up there. If it isn't the greatest of all time, it's got to be top 5. And maybe I'll just go ahead and give you my 5 while we're on it. So I would say South Park is one of them. The Simpsons is undeniably one of them. Futurama is undeniably one of them. I'm going to say also that one that no one mentioned that I'm very disappointed in is Ren and Stimpy. Ren and Stimpy was one of my favorite shows of all time. I think it did groundbreaking things in terms of animation. And, lest we forget, the people that made Ren and Stimpy, after John Kricfalusi left, those folks took over and created SpongeBob SquarePants. So if you like SpongeBob and you think it's got to be up there, I think Ren and Stimpy really deserves all the credit for that. And I've talked about Ren and Stimpy so many times in the show, it's ridiculous. So you guys know why. So Ren and Stimpy's up there as well. And to round things off, I probably would go with Batman the Animated Series. It just was such a cut above everything else around there. And I couldn't agree more with you guys' take on that. Now, that being said, out of all of them, guys, I just think it's impossible to beat The Simpsons. The Simpsons is the best animated show of all time in my mind. And, whether you still love it to this day, or whether you think it's really jumped the shark, I don't think there's any denying. 500 episodes, 20 years of shows, right? It is just one of the best shows that has ever come around. And even when it's bad, it's still pretty good. It's like pizza, right? So I just think that, Dan Castellaneta, it's just one of the best shows of all time, and I think it is the best. If I had to go to number 2, I'd say South Park. And I will say this. South Park has never jumped the shark. Ever. And it's been around since 1998, I think. So if you think about, and so the worst episodes of South Park were, in my mind, the very first ones. Where they are now is really just hitting their stride. What they're doing with South Park right now is some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen in my life. South Park is just so incredibly topical, so incredibly satirical. It is smarter than almost any show that's out there right now. You need a brain to enjoy South Park unless you just love a lot of cursing. But it is absolutely hilarious, and I'm telling you right now, South Park, if it continues at this clip, will eclipse The Simpsons as the greatest animated show of all time. Just my opinion, but then again, to a certain degree, that's why you guys tune in. So, I go Simpsons, I go South Park, it's all downhill from there. Everything else I think is kind of, there's distance between that. Alright, great conversation. Good stuff to talk about. This week though, I want to switch gears completely. We've got the season coming up for E3. We've got PAX East coming up. We've got GDC coming up. It's all gonna be happening very, very soon here. And one of the things that resulted from the rumor mill around GDC was something I thought that was really fascinating. And the idea that Valve might be producing a hardware platform that would compete with all of the significant players. The next Xbox, the next PlayStation, the next Nintendo Wii, right? An interesting concept. A Steam box. If you haven't read about it, go read about it. Check it out. Now, while I want to ask you about that in general, because I think that's an awesome thing to talk about, us that love video games, and especially those of us that love PC games that haven't really been able to connect with them in a very meaningful way in a long time. What I would like to ask you for next week is this. Are you ready for a new competitive hardware platform? In other words, are you guys ready to see, would you go out and buy a hardware platform that is brand new, right? Think of the first Xbox that came out. Think of the first PlayStation, right? And think of what might have moved you to buy that piece of hardware. Would you be ready to purchase a brand new platform, whether it's the Steam box or not, right? Would you be willing to jump on? And if so, what would you need to see out of that platform? That's what I want to know. I think some great conversations are going to come out of this. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with, as always. Thank you so much for watching the Weekly Ringer. I am the Commodore from the clan of the Grey Wolf, and there is no reset button.